Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, Alternative Parties friends, we have another exciting guest. His name is Mr. Revelis. He's from the Peace and Freedom Party, and he's running for office, and he's going to tell us all about that today, God willing. So welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you. Let us get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
All right, so for myself, I was born in Boyle Heights, which is a neighborhood of Los Angeles. A proud Chicano, and I've been raised with working class values all throughout my life. I kind of got into activism and politics in college when I joined the Students for Justice in Palestine and also an undocumented support group. So really, my activism is rooted in fighting for international solidarity and also for solidarity of oppressed groups inside the United States. Currently, I'm a teacher with Los Angeles Unified School District, and I'm a member of the union, and I'm currently going to be running for Montebello School Board, and that's about me.
Excellent. So what led you to the Peace and Freedom Party? You talked about your activism past. What led you to the Peace and Freedom Party in particular?
Well, I graduated from college about 6 years ago, and about then I was ready to jump into socialist organizing, and moving away from student organizing and actually doing something I felt in my community. And really I jumped between so many socialist groups trying to find the right fit for me. I think back then I was just looking for a group that was more ideologically fit with me, and I just wasn't liking what I was finding. So eventually I started looking back at electoral parties because I did want to do some electoral work and mix electoral work and community organizing. And at first I started looking at the Green Party because that's the third party that we hear of all the time. But then I remembered that I have voted for Peace and Freedom Party candidates in the past. So I remember like the first socialist I voted for in the state election was John Parker, and he is with another socialist party. I forgot exactly which one. It's based in Los Angeles, and he ran as a socialist for Senate, and that really interested me, and I really remember reading about the Peace and Freedom Party and about what he stood for, and I was really interested, so I remember that, and I was like, let me switch from Green to Peace and Freedom and start finding more about it. So I was kind of just in it for a few years. I kind of took a break because I moved to Dallas for a master's program, and I was involved with other socialist and communist groups over there. But when I moved back, just actually this past summer in 2021, I rejoined the Peace and Freedom Party, and I joined the Los Angeles Central Committee, and then I've really been really pushing for the Peace and Freedom Party because it's a big tent socialist organization, and I really take pride in being able to collaborate and work with other socialist groups in any capacity. And that's one thing I liked about the Peace and Freedom Party is we're very gung-ho about working with other groups.
Sounds good. So since you're a teacher, how does that inform your politics?
I think being a teacher and kind of understanding the world and the community I live in, especially in Los Angeles, from a class lens. I see so many students who are showing up to my classroom. They're hungry, they're sleepy, I can tell they're stressed out. Sometimes they wear the same clothes 3 times a week. They don't wash their clothes. And I know it's things that are not their fault just because under capitalism, are the most working class of us barely have time or the money to take care of these things, especially when our parents are working 50 hours a week when, a couple decades ago, it took one parent to work 40 hours a week and you would be able to sustain your family, but now you have two parents working 50 hours a week and they have very little time to take care of their child and make sure they're ready for school. So by the time these students do come to my classroom, they're not ready to learn, and it's really like half the day is spent getting the students ready to learn. And I understand that that's because of capitalism, and then that the only way I try the best that I can with what I have, but I understand to reach our full potential in the education system, we need to be under a socialist system. That way, all of my students show up and have the capacity to learn and are ready to learn.
So you mentioned how you perceive it as, in the past, the families could get by with less work to survive, but nowadays it requires dual income. Why do you think that has changed, and what has made that change?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One reason is just that the unionization rate in the United States was much higher back then.
Okay.
And especially, between the 50s and the 80s, parents had very high wages for the time, and they had good health care benefits if they were in a union, especially in the Los Angeles area where there was a lot of union jobs and there was a lot of factory jobs that you could support your family on one wage. But what happened in the 70s and 80s in many parts of Los Angeles, and I know specifically in South Central, the communities are deindustrialized. So these union high-wage jobs were just leaving Los Angeles to go to either different states or other countries. And that really put the people of the working class communities in Los Angeles not only in an economic depression, but in a social depression. Because I've seen the effects of what happens to people when their jobs move away. And, yes, their economic value goes away, but also it's a big shock to your mindset. How we're taught since from we're little that if you work hard, you will prosper in the United States. But for some people, that's just ripped away suddenly because your factory or your job is moving somewhere else. And many people, I feel, because they don't understand the capitalist system, they don't know how to deal with that. And it's a big shock to many people.
Okay. So it sounds like you attribute that to declining rates of unionization and increased globalization.
Yeah, definitely. I think, with Ronald Reagan in the 80s and the really big push for neoliberalism, they attacked the working class on two fronts. One, they attempt to attack unions as much as they can throughout the 80s and either crush the unions or pass laws that would lead to people leaving unions, or they attack union jobs by opening those same jobs in different countries and having people leave. So it was like they attacked the working class internationally and domestically. And I don't think anyone was prepared for it, especially if, your whole life you see your parents grow up with union jobs and union wages. And I think it was a big shock to the American psyche.
Sure. Some unionists think that certain types of unions are better than other types. Do you believe that, or do you think all unions are good?
I do believe there are some better than others. Usually I only speak of this privately because one of my core beliefs, I have the same thing about socialist organizations and unions, is publicly I will always back and support these different groups because I know in the long run they are good. But privately, I do believe that some unions, especially the ones that are connected to the Democratic Party, are kind of there to maintain a status quo. They'll push for that 3% raise increase. They'll maintain your health benefits, but they aren't doing the wider work of, hey, there's inflation of 10%. We need to fight not only for that 10%, but also an extra 5% because we really need, your wages are already lower than they needed to be with this, and then plus this 10% inflation, we need to be fighting for way more than 10. And then I
Sure.
don't think many unions are pushing for that. They'll push for your, regular yearly increase. And then instead of backing and supporting genuine pushes for healthcare for all, they kind of just protect our health benefits how they are. Even though that if we were able to get healthcare for all, we'd be able to move resources away from defending our healthcare benefits to fighting for higher wages and better working conditions. And I think some unions really dropped the ball on that, but I really think that can go back to the Red Scare and the expelling of socialists and communists and anarchists and the really other left-wing labor leaders from our ranks because of the Red Scare, and it just really left an opening for liberal and democratic supporters to move into the leadership roles of these unions and kind of defang us.
All right. Earlier you mentioned the term neoliberalism. I personally understand it, or at least like to think I do, but for our audience who may not have run across the term, kindly explain that briefly.
Neoliberalism, I feel like many people have different definitions, but for me, it's exporting the capitalist system abroad to other countries. So
Okay.
how this would be in practice would be there's a semi-independent country in South America. I might install a puppet government through a coup, or I might have them pass certain laws that are in favor of American companies by paying off their politicians, and then through that paying off, that coup, or those changes of laws, I'm now able to export my capital, my factories, and my businesses to that country and export my jobs at much lower wages with no benefits to their workers. So I'm paying far less in my labor costs, and I'm able to bring those products that that factory makes back to my country and sell them for the same price. So I'm getting a higher profit, but the workers in my own country are making less money because now their jobs are somewhere else. So I think neoliberalism is really just let me go to another country, convince them to export my capital to them, and bring back those products and have them for a cheaper price.
All right. So for the school board position, what do you plan to change shall you get elected to the school board? How do you plan to implement your socialist vision as a school board member?
If I am elected, I have a lot of comprehensive plans. Like I want to end the corporate interest in public schools. So a lot of public schools are strapped for cash just because our charter schools come in and they take a lot of public money, but they're privately, that money's privately handled, and a lot of it is used to pay really high pay to admin, to a lot of it is funneled elsewhere into political campaigns. I mean, if you just look up like bad things that charter schools do on Google, there'd be like so many ways of how charter schools are closing down. They're funneling money to political campaigns. They're paying admin like insanely high pay. And I want to bring that money back and that billionaire-funded for-profit influence from our public schools and spend it on some programs like hiring more teachers and reduce our caseloads, hiring more TAs for teachers that handle special classes like special education. I want to make sure that every family is able to have free full-day Head Start. That's what we call it here, but I know in other places they call it preschool or TK4 because it's just through my study, I've learned that students who do PK graduate at much higher rates. And right now in most places it's not free. You have to qualify or have a low income, but it's really hurting like middle class families or working class families that make too much to afford these programs or be able to get these programs for free, but they don't make enough to pay for these programs themselves. I want to expand after school programs for students who are behind, but also to push students into higher learning, and just reallocate existing resources by instituting a maximum wage. You know, there's some teachers who make $50,000 a year, while there's administration making $250,000 a year, and I think that's unfair. I think those maximum wage of 3 to 4 times minimum wage worker at that district needs to be implemented so we can not only rearrange that money to be build up our public education system, but also pay our workers more. Because if you want a higher wage, you would need to increase the wage of your lowest paid workers. And also a Green New Deal for public school, because what I imagine is making sure all of our energy that we pull is all from solar power. And what I envision is also in the summer months when the schools aren't using as much electricity because there's no one in them, that power can be then sold back to the community at lower rates. But I really envision a lot of these things are going to be really hard to fight for, just because if I am elected, I'll be the only socialist on a 5-person school board. But I think really just pushing my ideas and telling people what's possible would really bring an opening for people to start talking about the things that they can have in their community. Because right now, our school board and many school boards around the country, they say, oh, you know, we can fix this school up, but we can't have these programs. That's too much money. You know, we only have a certain budget. But I want to come in there and be like, this is lying, because we spend money on software programs we don't use. We have admin that are making crazy amounts of money. Like, we just need to reallocate our existing tax base, because working class people don't like taxes, so we know we can't raise the taxes. But what we can do is find where there's wasteful spending, especially in my community. I live in East LA, and then the rest of the Montebello school district is in Southeast Los Angeles, is what we call it. And it's a hotbed of corrupt Democrats just taking our tax money and just either they pay people off, or like there's an attorney at one of the nearby cities who makes $330,000 a month, when the Los Angeles attorney, which is a city that's more than 10 times bigger than that small city, the Los Angeles attorney only makes $110,000 a month. I mean, not only, but like, I'm just kind of like showing the disparity of how are you paying some people crazy amounts of money, yet you're saying there's no money for programs. It's just, we need to shed the light on where our money is going in our local community, not only with school board positions, but in the city council positions, and have some transparency so people actually know where their money is going, and so they can imagine, wait, if this hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars actually went into building up our communities, like, we can have all of the things that we imagine and can't even imagine. And I want to bring in the imagination of we can have all of this, and this is how we are going to pay for it.
Sure. So what's it like to get on the ballot for a school board? What signature requirements or fees do you have to do?
That's what I love about school boards. I had no signature requirement. I had no fees. There are the only thing is, and I know for city council, I believe it's either also no signature requirement. I think you have to be in a big city like Los Angeles, which I'm right next to. They have signature requirements, but in smaller cities like I am for the Montebello School District and the surrounding other cities in Southeast Los Angeles and around me, there's I don't need any signatures. There's no fee. The biggest thing I do think is kind of blocking is for my campaign statement. If I wanted a campaign statement, I would need $1,500 for it to be in English and $3,000 for it just English and Spanish. And I think that's a lot of money just to put in. It's not even a whole page. Like a candidate statement, it's like a third of a page. So they're asking $3,000 just to put some cheap ink. I know ink is expensive, but on a few thousand voter booklets, So I think it's pretty ridiculous that they're asking thousands of dollars just to put, a few hundred words on a third of a piece of paper. Um, I think it will I'll have somewhat difficulty raising that money, but I think I'll be able to do it. It's just, I think it's a big barrier for anyone who, like myself, is a working class person. I'm a teacher. Raising $3,000, I can't pay for it on my own. I really wish every person who was on the ballot would be able to put their statement on the booklet, or at least a much smaller fee than $3,000. I feel like it should be I feel like a few hundred would be able to meet the actual cost of putting it on the ballot, my campaign statement on the ballot. So I think
Sure.
that's the biggest hurdle.
Okay. It's good to hear about the lack of signatures needed and the lack of fees. That's awesome that you
Yeah,
don't have to fight that battle.
I really think really for socialists really to push. I mean, it's a thing that people complain at us so much. Oh, why don't third parties run small races? And I'm like, well, here I am. I'm doing it. I'm running the small race. I really think school board and city councils, we can really capture it and just change the way people think about their communities and what cities can do for them. I mean, if we look in the past, in the city of Milwaukee, socialists were in power for decades, and they were able to implement sewer systems and clean water and social housing programs and so many programs and poverty reduction programs for the communities because they were able to reallocate the resources. And that was so popular that the Milwaukee had a socialist party mayor all the way into the 1960s. And I really think we can do the same thing nowadays just because the word socialism is becoming not as bad as it was before. And I really think people who are pushing a socialist agenda in our local communities can finally start winning again. And we just need to start at the city council and school board level in these small cities where we don't have as many hurdles to get on the ballot.
Sounds good. Yes, you're right. The socialists ran in the past, so that's good inspiration for the present.
Definitely. I did a lot of research into what the Socialist Party did in Milwaukee, in their city council and the school boards and I know DSA was running socialists for their school board as well, so I would really look into how they did it and what they did to kind of inform my run.
Excellent. So how can our audience support your campaign?
Well, right now, if you look up on either Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, it's going to be either Aaron Reveles for Montebello Unified School District, Aaron Reveles for MUSD. Let me look at the exact name of my link tree right now, because I kind of messed up and had different names for everything. I should have standardized it all, but some social medias have different requirements. So my link tree is just a basic link tree, and then at Reveles for MUSD, and from there you can go into my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. This coming week, I will be meeting with some fellow socialists. They're going to help me put up a website so I can put a donation link and a volunteer link, because really I think is when you get a good group of like 10 to 15 volunteers in a small school board race, I really think you could just knock on enough doors to convince enough people to vote for you, because it's just a couple small cities in the school board district, and I think it just takes a small dedicated base of people to win these elections.
Excellent. All right.
And then,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say I could just I could just send you the link tree, and I guess you could post it on the notes of this.
Yeah. That would be best. Then I don't have to look for it myself.
Yeah,
So if you want to send that to me by Instagram, that would be great.
for sure.
Aaron, we appreciate you coming on the podcast today and talking about your campaign, and we wish you all the best success and everything great in your campaign.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today.
Sure thing. All the best to you in your teaching career and everything else. So take care.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye now.